Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamsharashibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyah. Sarvopaplavarahitah prajnana pratyagartho Brahmaivahamasmi Brahmaivahamasmi. Om Narayanam Padmabhavam Vasishtham Shaktin cha Tatputra Parasharan cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapadam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Mathasya Shishyam Shri Shankaracharya Mathasya Padmapadan cha Hasta Malakan cha Shishyam Tantotakam Vartikakaramanyam Asmad Gurun Santatamanatosmi. Shruti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Mangalacharan. Pranamya Ramabhidamatmadhipadam Jagat Prasuti Sthiti Sanyamayanam Tadatmakan Shankara Purvakan Guru. थोड़ा बता रहा मयोपदेशार्थ विभाग उच्यते. Here in the dialogue between the teacher and the disciple, the teacher shows the shishya, the disciple, evam tari swarthastvam chitimatvat. You are of the nature of chit or consciousness, swartha, independent of everything else, which serves its own purpose, is not meant for anything else. Na parena prayojyase. You are not impelled into activity by something else, you are swartha, independent, self-established, self-shining. Agnehe ushna prakashvattva chittivattvasya vivakshitatvat. That consciousness that is your nature is like the heat is the nature of the fire, meaning that it is an inherent nature, is not something different from you. Bhagavan, in the 74th passage then, Ityuktah Shishya Uvacha. So question was, Sushupte Vishramya Jagarat Swapnayoho Dukkham Anubhavami. Seems that I am a Jivatma who has some respite in the deep sleep state, but constantly experiencing pain in the waking and dream states. Kim avayavama svahavaha. Is dukkham, the pain, is it my nature? Kim va nimittikaheti, or that the dukkha, the sorrow, is for a reason other than myself. Kimaso vyamoha apagataha kim vana. That this delusion was there in you, that the pain or the sorrow that I am experiencing, is it my nature? Or is it due to some other thing? The teacher has shown it is due to ignorance. You are by nature nothing but pure consciousness. Ityuktah Shishya Uvacha. When the disciple was just told by the teacher that to think that you were sorrowful was moha or delusion, and by this unfoldment of the teacher now, teacher finally asked him, has that delusion gone away? That dukkha is your nature. Is that delusion gone away? You understood that dukkha, the sorrow, is not your nature, is due to something else, ignorance. And that the self is of nature of pure consciousness. Swartha meaning is independent. Understand that self is independent means that nothing can make it unhappy. Meaning that that is independent, which is not influenced by anything else, not subject to any influence at all. The one that shines in his own glory, unaffected by anything. If there appears to be sorrow, then it is only a delusion, meaning superimposition. Sorrow that belongs to something, such as in the mind, is superimposed upon the self, and then this notion arises that I am sorrowful. And therefore, not only sorrow is the nature, sorrow can never touch you. You are ever free from sorrow, ever the nature of Ananda. When teacher said this, Shishya Uvacha Bhagavan, Avagatastat Prasadad Vyamoha. O Venerable Sir, by your grace, my Vyamoha, my deep delusion is gone. That sorrow is my nature is gone. That in the waking and dream also, when I am experiencing sorrow, it is only a superimposition upon myself and not my nature. Kintu mama kutasthataya samshaya. Kutastayam samshaya. But still I have a doubt that I am kutastha, that I am changeless. Kuta means an anvil upon which a goldsmith may make various ornaments. So whereas the change takes place in the ornaments, that which is the basis of change, the anvil ever remains changeless. So kutastha kutavat tishthate, the one that remains changeless as an anvil. Then I am changeless, that is where I have this doubt. And understand that if change is the nature of Atma, then it can never be free from sorrow. But the sorrow is not my nature, seems to be clear to me. But no kutasatayam samshaya, there is doubt in my changelessness. Katham teaches us why. Then the disciple explains in detail. Accepting the position of a Kshanikavadin, a school of Buddhism which is called subjectivist, which thinks that all there is subject. There is no such thing as object, there are no external objects at all. What is there is the various pratyayas or the various cognitions taking place in the mind. There are no corresponding objects outside. Now says Shabdadinam Satasiddhirnasti Achetanatvad. The objects of the world like Shabda, Sparsha, the sound, the touch, taste, etc. They cannot be self-existing. They cannot be self-shining. They cannot be independent, meaning that they cannot independently exist. Achetanatvad, because they are achetana, they are unconscious. An unconscious thing cannot be independent because unconscious thing cannot reveal itself, and therefore it cannot prove its own existence. Existence of something is established only when it is revealed to us. An unconscious thing cannot reveal itself, therefore it cannot establish its own existence, which means that it needs to be illumined by something for it to show that I am. For this cloth, to claim that I am requires that it should become the object of awareness, it should be illumined. Shabdadiyakar pratyotpattestu tesham. Shabdadiyakar pratyotpatte. And these objects are responsible for creating corresponding thoughts in the mind. There is an object or sound out there, and that creates a pratyaya, a perception or cognition of the nature of sound. So that we accept that the thoughts of the objects such as sound, etc. take place is because there are corresponding objects out there, then only the thoughts can take place. The thoughts of sound, etc. cannot independently take place. So, objects are there, they can be known only when a thought corresponding to the object takes place in our mind. This part can be known only when a thought of the nature of part, then a part thought takes place, then only we know that there is an object called part. So this is unconscious, not independent. How about the thoughts? Pratyanam itaretara vyavritta visheshanam nilapitadi akaravatam satasiddhi asambhavat. Even the part thought, cloth thought, sound thought, these different thoughts also cannot be independent because itaretara vyavritta visheshanam. The part thought is not the cloth thought is not the sound thought. Each thought displaces other thought. That means all of them are constantly changing. What is constantly changing always requires, again, that means it is unconscious. Which means that it also again requires something else to illumine, meaning that thoughts also being changing, mutually exclusive, are unconscious. The thoughts also cannot reveal themselves. Tasmat bhakyakar nimittatvam gamyate iti. So the thoughts also can take place only when there are corresponding objects outside. If thoughts are independently taking place, then you do not require reason for the thought to take place. What is meant by independent is that does not require any reason to be there. The thoughts like part thought, cloth thought, etc. are called pratyayas. Are they independent? They are not, because they have their form because of the corresponding objects outside. And therefore thoughts are there because the external objects are there. Bahyakaravat shabdadi akaratva siddhi. Shabda, sparshadi, akara, the form of the external objects. And the thoughts also have corresponding forms. Therefore, the thoughts also are not independently taking place. Thoughts also take place because of corresponding objects. Moment something exists because of something else, that means it is dependent. It is dependent means it is not self-existing, meaning it is not self-shining. And therefore, it depends upon conscious something else to reveal itself. Tatha pratyanapi aham pratyay alambana vastu vedanam samhadatvat achaitanyopatte. This pratyayas also, which are nothing but modifications of mind. The part thought, cloud thought, etc. are nothing but the modifications of the mind. Samhatatvat. So thought also is an aggregate. Aham pratyay alam vastu vedanam samhatatvat. A thought also is created. Understand? See, what is independent is never created. Because it is self-existing. What is created, such as thought, depends upon its cause for it to exist. Pot is because the clay is. Therefore, pot is not independent because it requires clay to be there for it to exist. You would call that independent, which does not require anything else for it to exist, so it can't be an effect. Consciousness cannot be a product. And what is product is always an aggregate of some components. Like a pot is a product. It is an aggregate of the various particles of clay formed into a shape. So thought also is created. So thought also is nothing but an aggregate of its components. Sattva, rajas, tamas, whatever it is made up of. Therefore, achaitanya uvatte. Thoughts also are achaitanya, unconscious. Swarthatva sambhavad suruvyadrikta grahaka grahyatvena siddhi. So thought also cannot reveal itself. Thought also is not independent. Is also there for something else, to serve somebody else's purpose, which is Atma. A thought also serves the purpose of someone else because it is dependent. Swartatva sambhavat, a thought also does not exist for its own sake. The thought also exists for the sake of something else. For example, the sense organ of eyes, for example, do not exist for their own sake, they exist for the sake of the seer. The organ of hearing also is there for the sake of the hearer. And so also the thoughts are there, they serve the purpose of someone else. That means they are not self-existing, not self-revealing. That means that they are revealed by something else, someone else, namely the self. Sarupa vyatarikta grahaka grahyatvena siddhi. Therefore, the existence of a thought is established because of the one that sees the thought illumines the thought. Grahya, grahaka. Grahya, that which is perceived. Grahaka, the one who perceives. And whatever is unconscious, dependent, is always perceived. And therefore, the existence of anything unconscious as a part requires some illuminator for it to exist, for it to reveal itself. So thoughts also being unconscious also require to be revealed or require to be known. And therefore, thoughts also are grahya. They are also known, they are also revealed And what is known depends upon the knower or grahaka. See that there are external objects. They are not independent because they are known only when corresponding thoughts are there. The thoughts also are not independent because thoughts also depend upon the corresponding objects. So external objects are unconscious and therefore not self-existing, not self-shining. The pratyaya, the thoughts also, the part thought, cloud thought, etc., all of these are also unconscious, therefore not self-existing, not self-shining. Then how do you know they are there? How do you know that the external objects are there when there is a corresponding thought? How do you know that a part is when the part thought is there? How do you know part thought is? Because part thought also is created. It also has a form. Therefore it is also an assembly, also unconscious, serving someone else's purpose. So how do you know that thought is? Says grahakatvena siddhi. There must be a knower of the thought. Thought is also known, and the known is established by knower, meaning that known requires a knower for it to reveal its existence. A part is known to me and I am the knower. The part requires me to reveal its existence. So grahaka, grahyatvena siddhi, there must be grahaka, a perceiver of the thoughts also, because of which the existence of the thoughts also is established. Shabdadivat eva. Just as the objects, the sound, touch, etc. are established because of corresponding thoughts. Similarly, thoughts also are established only when there is a knower of the thoughts. So that's how you're coming to Atma. How do you establish the existence of Atma? Because everything else is dependent. Everything else is unconscious. And there must be something that reveals them. They're all dependent, therefore there must be an independent entity. A self-existing, self-shining entity must be there, and that is Atma. To arrive at that is this whole, the sequence of arguments. Asamhatatvechati sati. So objects also are an aggregate of 5 elements, etc. The thought also is the product of the elements, understand? The sattva aspect of the 5 elements, creates the thought. So there is also a sanghata and assembly. But the illuminator of them, that is consciousness, must be independent, self-revealing, therefore it is not produced, is not created, is ever existing, therefore not an assembly. Asamhatatve sati, therefore the grahaka, the perceiver, the one that perceives or objectifies the thought is asamhata, is not an assembly. Chaitanyatmakatvat, he must be of the nature of consciousness, self-shining consciousness, self-revealing consciousness. Swarthopi, therefore I am clear that I am consciousness, swartha, independent, not dependent upon anything to impart me existence, not dependent upon anything to reveal me. However, understand that the thoughts are the objects are established because of corresponding thoughts, and thoughts are established because of corresponding knower of the thoughts. So Atma is consciousness, all right. Independent, all right. Uncreated, all right. But it is knower. Because then only thoughts which are known, the existence of thoughts which are known can be established. So nilapitadi akaranam aham pratyanam upalabdhayati. So the fact that the thoughts which are the nature of different colors and sounds, etc., are known because there is a knower, and therefore Atma, even though of the nature of consciousness, is nevertheless the knower or perceiver. And perceiver also undergoes a corresponding change depending upon the object of perception. Right now I am the perceiver of the pot, then I become the perceiver of the cloth, become perceiver of the clock. So as the object of perception changes, the perceiver also undergoes the corresponding change. So Atma, Kutastha, changeless of the Atma is a question in my mind. That I am not Anatma is clear to me. I am not this body, mind, Sanghata is clear to me. I am independent is clear to me. I am consciousness is clear to me. But I am changeless is not clear to me. Because there must be someone to know the changes. That changes that are taking place are known to someone, and that must be knower of the changes. The knower of changes also must be changing to know the changes. Tam Guru, it is samshaya, this is a doubt. Tam Guru uvacha, to him the Guru said, na yukta tava samshaya. O disciple, this doubt on your part that you are the self is changing, that doubt is not reasonable. Na yukta. It's not tenable, not reasonable. Not reasonable meaning that if you employ reason, then you find that the doubt doesn't have a place stand. Why is it so? Yata tesham pratyanam niyamena asheshata upalabdhe eva aparinamitvat kutastattva siddho. The teacher gives a very interesting reason for establishing the Kutasattva of changeless of the Atma. So you must be changeless because you simultaneously know all the pratyas. All the thoughts of the past, present, future, in entirety are illumined by you. Known means illumined by you. Atma is not a knower in a primary sense. It will reveal that illuminator. But understand that when you say that you are the knower, and therefore the knower has to be changing. Let me tell you, if you are a knower, what kind of knower you are? You are the knower who simultaneously knows all the thoughts. I am in his 75th passage. Passage in this book, page 71, in this English book. Page 52. Page 49. Tam Guru vacha na yukta tava samshaya. So you arrived at this conclusion that you are changing as a result of some reasoning process. But if you apply proper reasoning, that you cannot arrive at this conclusion. Yes, you are knower, all right. But what kind of knower you are? Tesham pratyanam niyamena, without fail, asheshta upalabdhe. You are a kind of a knower that is constantly illuminating all the thoughts. Meaning that normally, that will be explained. A knower of the part only knows the part, doesn't know the cloth at that moment. When I am a perceiver of the part, then part is only object of perception, not cloth. You are not a knower of that nature. You are simultaneously illuminating all the thoughts. Tesham pratya niyamena asheshta upalabdhe aparinamitvat. So there can be a knower also with a changeless knower. When corresponding change does not take place, the objects keep on changing. But if in the knower the corresponding change does not take, there can be a knower who knows all the changing objects without undergoing a corresponding change. So now we have two knowers. One is the ego, or it will be explained so that you know what we are talking about. One is what we call the knower, called pramata. Karta, bhokta, pramata. Who is he? The doer, experiencer, knower. Who is he? The ego. The I thought. Eka ahankrutaranya syat antahkara rupini. Our mind is broadly divided into two categories. One is I thought and the rest is thoughts. The I thought is a knower in the primary sense. And that undergoes the change corresponding to the change in the object. So, I thought is a knower. So, Ghatadhasta, knower of the pot, knower of the cloth, who is he? Is I thought in the primary sense. I thought also ultimately is a thought. So, that also needs something else to eliminate that. So one that eliminates I thought also is a real eliminator. In that sense, because without that eliminator, even I thought also cannot be. Therefore, in one sense you can say that the consciousness that eliminates I thought should be called the real knower. When as much as the knower correspondingly undergoes change based on what is known, that kind of knowerness is not there in Atma, so he cannot be called knower also. You understand? Atma cannot be called knower in the primary sense because the knower should undergo change corresponding to what is known. In that sense, Atma is not the knower. In that sense, ego is the knower. In as much as knower is the one who eliminates what is known, in that sense, ego is not the knower because it doesn't eliminate the known. Atma, consciousness, eliminates. So if you say that knower means eliminator, then Atma is the knower. If you say knower is the one who knows a particular object, then ego is the knower. So understand this, keep this in mind when this discussion is taking place. Because they go round and round and round, they don't come directly, in this discussion here. Yata tesham pratyanam niyamena asheshada upalabdehe. You are an upalabdha or knower. Asheshada, without any exception, you know all the thoughts. Not one at a time, simultaneously. Aparinamitvat. For simultaneously eliminating the thoughts, you don't have to undergo the change of. See, if you eliminate one thought at a time, then you undergo a change corresponding to thought. If you eliminate all the thoughts at a time, you don't require to change that aparinamitvat. Inasmuch as you know, which means eliminate here. Since you eliminate all the thoughts simultaneously, you are just an eliminator. And eliminate eliminates everything. The lamp in the theatre eliminates all the objects in the theatre simultaneously, understand? Similarly, Atma is like the lamp in the theatre eliminating all the things simultaneously. In that Nataka Deepa, the dancer is the buddhi or the mind. The sense organs are the accompaniment. The sponsor is the ego. Sense objects are all the objects, the audience. So all these are simultaneously illumined by the lamp. The audience, sense objects. The accompaniment, sense organs. The sponsor, the ego. The dancer, the buddhi or the mind. So that is that illuminator, kind that simultaneously illumines everything, that doesn't undergo any change. Or the audience keeps doing something and changing, and dancer change, everybody changes. The illuminator does not change. Nischay, so Ukutastat, therefore. In fact, that is the reason why I say that you are changeless. Because you are knower. What kind of knower? That simultaneously knows everything. Inasmuch as you simultaneously know or eliminate everything, that itself establishes your changelessness. Now you are presenting being knower as a reason for change. I said knower is a reason for changelessness, understand? Both are right. The disciple says I am knower. He takes that knower as the local knower. Ego. The teacher says you are knower, but what knower? The illuminator. So teacher used the word knower to establish the changelessness of the Atma. But disciple interprets that knower as a knowing knower of particular thoughts, therefore he says that is the reason for changing the Atma. So teacher says the reason that I gave you to establish changelessness of the Atma is the very reason you are giving back to me to prove that Atma is changing. Yadi hi tav parinamitvam syat. If you were also knower, changing knower, ashesha svavishaya chitta pracharopalabdhi na syat, then you cannot simultaneously eliminate all the chitta prachara. Prachara means all the movement of the mind, the various thoughts, you could not have simultaneously eliminate if you were a changing knower. Use example, chitta seva, svavisha, for example, chitta. The mind also knows its objects. But mind knows any object one at a time. The pot thought knows only pot. Cloth thought comes, then it knows cloth. Clock thought comes, knows a clock. So, mind is not, what kind of knower is the mind? The one that only knows one thing at a time and one after the other. Indriyana, sense organs also are knowers of their objects, eliminators, but again, one object at a time is eliminated in sequence. So if the sense organs are changing knowers, mind also is changing knower. If you are also changing, then you would have been knower like that. But I say that you are knowing everything simultaneously. That kind of knower you could not be had you been changing knower. Nachatata atmanata suvisha ekadesho palabdhi. But Atma's knowing is not, again, sense like eyes also. When they see a part, see only one side of the part, understand? Even when I am looking at the part, I can only perceive this side of the part that is exposed to me. I cannot perceive the other side of the part. One amsha means only one amsha, that's all I know. Only part I know. Only one object at a time, one by one, and that only part of the object. Atma knows all objects simultaneously, totally. Ata kutastata evatava, therefore you are changeless. So that is right. But then still you say you are knower. In Sanskrit the word for the knower is upalabdha. Atma is upalabdha. So then upalabdha means knower. Now what is knower? Who is knower? To the verb know, we have applied the suffix ar. That makes it an agent of action, Driver means what? The agent of act of driving. Teacher, the agent of act of teaching. Knower, the agent of act of knowing. Who is the agent? Agent is the one who is the very locus of the action. Driver is the agent of act of driving, means driver is the locus of where the driving takes place. So driver does the driving, so driver keeps changing. Teacher keeps changing. But as the action takes place, that which is the locus of the action also undergoes change. So upalabdha means perceiver. Who is perceiver? Perceiver means the agent of act of perception. See, in Sanskrit, the verb is called kriyapada. Kriyapada means it is a word denoting kriya or action. A verb is a word that denotes the action. So upalabdhi means perception. To upalav means to perceive. That's a verb. So upalav means to perceive. Then to perceive becomes an action because every verb always denotes an action. Kriyapada. So next is whether to perceive is an action or not is the question here. But it's a verb, all right. Upalabh means to perceive. Here in this case. To attain also it can mean, but here it means to perceive. Is a kriyapada. So that would imply that to perceive also is an act. Perceiver is the agent of the act of perceiving. So says the disciple, Upalabdhir nama dhatvartah vikriya eva. Upalabdhi. Upa is the prefix. Labh is the dhatu. And T is the pratyaya. Upalabh plus T becomes upalabdhi. Now, so every verb also, you cannot use it directly without applying a suffix. Love is the verb, but you apply a suffix like T, labdhi, then it's you. So, upalabdhi involves what? Upalabh is the verb, plus T is the suffix. So, verb is the original thing, material. You apply different kinds of suffixes, you get different meanings, So, gam, then gatihi, ganta, and gamanam. So different suffixes you apply, different meanings you get. So similarly, here, so that verb remains the same, but you apply different suffixes, you get different meanings. So verb is called prakriti. Prakriti means the original substance. And suffix called vikruti, that brings about a change in that. So gam is the original thing, to that you apply ti, then gati means the motion. So prakriti and vikruti. What is prakriti? The verbal root is called prakriti. Here love, upalabh is the verbal root called prakriti. Prakriti means the original substance. To which apply suffix, in this case ti, becomes upalabdhi. So this is called vikruti. So upalabdhir nama dhatvartah vikriya eva. Upalabdhi, if you just take the word upalabdhi, then upalabh and ti, it is dhatvartah, it is the meaning of a dhatu, upalabh. So perception is the meaning of the verb to perceive. Perceive, then you apply the suffix, becomes perception. Like upalabh, you apply suffix, upalabdhi. So perception is the result of the act of perceiving, isn't it? Perception is the result of act of perceiving. And it's a result of something, therefore, it's always a change, perceiving. So perception is a changing phenomenon. Upalabdhu kutasthatmata chayati viruddham. So now, the upalabh is a dhatu which undergoes change depending upon what suffix you apply. And so this upalabdha or perceiver is the result of the act of perception, becomes perceiver. If perception is changing thing, then the perceiver should also be changing. So how can you say perceiver, Atma is a perceiver, upalabdha, how can it be changeless? Like vakta, speaker, cannot be changeless because the speaking takes place, the speaker also undergoes a change. Like hearer, hearing changes, hearer also changes. So perceiver, as perception changes, perceiver also should change. So you say Atma is perceiver and then you say it is changeless, how can it be? Although already teacher said that you are changeless perceiver because you are a special kind of perceiver who perceives all the objects simultaneously. Therefore you are changeless. So that he understood. But you still call him Upalabdha. Atma is still called a perceiver. But Upalabdha has to change because it is a result of the verb Upalabha. It involves Kriya. And therefore, a result of a Kriya. I become a knower as a result of the act of knowing. So, knower is a result of the act of knowing. Perceiver is a result of the act of perceiving. As perceiving changes, perceiver will change. So, how can perceiver be changeless? Says na dhatvartha vikriyayam upalabdhi upacharad. Teacher says that there are two kinds of verbs. What you say, the rule applies to verb in general. That verb is, it denotes the verb of action. There are some words which are the verbs of just being. To be also is a verb, understand? Doesn't imply any action. To shine also is a verb. Does not imply action. So therefore, there is no rule that every time that the verb necessarily implies a change is not a rule, because there can be a verb which can do its job without changing. To be is a verb. Therefore, it does its job without having to undergo any change. So, illumine. So, for example, sun shines. To shine is a verb for which no action is required on the part of sun. Sun illumines. To illumine also is a verb, which again does not require any action on the part of the sun. So my disciple, there is no rule that every verb necessarily implies a change. Then why do you call him Upalabdha? Only in a secondary sense we call Atma Upalabdha, the knower, perceiver. So, Dhatvartha Vikya Upalabdhi Upacharad. Upalabdhi means perception. So we use a verb and the noun perception and call Atma the perceiver only in a secondary sense, not in a primary sense. So who is the primary knower? Ahankara. Yo hi bauddha pratyaya. So what is knowledge and who is knower? Bauddha pratyaya. What is bauddha? Buddhi parinama. The modification of every thought is a modification of buddhi of the mind. Pratyaya, prativishayam ayadigacchati pratyaya, that which in fact objectifies every object is called pratyaya. So the cognition that takes place in the mind. So sadhatvartah vikriyatmakaha. The actual perception, which is the meaning of the root perceive, applies primarily to this thought of the mind, which undergoes a corresponding change depending on the object, because it's pratyaya. So prati vishayam ayati gacchati. So that which has its scope with reference to every object. As objects change, the thoughts also correspondingly change. As the object is part, then there is a part thought. Object is cloth, then there is cloth thought. It's called pratyaya. So that is where the real vikriya is, because that pratyaya undergoes change depending on the object of pratyaya. Vikriyatmaka. So real vikriya or change takes place where? In the mind, in the thought. Alright, but thought, as you say, it is only unconscious. So unconscious thought cannot illumine the object. Upalabdhi abhasa phalavasana iti. But it is the nature of the thought to necessarily reflect consciousness. It is the nature of a pure substance to reflect any lighted object. Like water is a pure transparent substance, and therefore it reflects any shining object such as a sun or the moon. So also buddhi is also a pure substance made of sattva, and therefore it is a nature to reflect shining thing such as consciousness. This is called abhasa. What is abhasa? A reflection. Upalabdhi abhasa phalavasana iti. Real Upalabdha is Atma. But the reflection of Atma takes place in the Buddhi, and that is where the actual perception takes place, because perception requires change. Atma cannot change, so Atma can't be perceived in primary sense. Buddhi can change, but Buddhi unconscious cannot be perceived in primary sense. Buddhi along with the reflection of Atma or consciousness. So that is how that displays the nature of both. A part thought has both the aspects. It has a changing aspect because it is thought. It is a conscious aspect because it reflects consciousness. And therefore, who is a perceiver? A perceiver also has two things. Perceiver meaning a conscious entity, but it changes, therefore there is the inertness, unconsciousness also there. So, the real perceiver is a union of the conscious and unconscious. That's called ego. That's what Vedanta explained, because consciousness primarily cannot be samsari, cannot be perceiver. I thought also merely because it is thought unconscious cannot be perceiver. But I thought along with the reflection of consciousness becomes perceiver. The part thought with the reflection of consciousness becomes perception. And in a secondary sense, Atma is called perception or is called perceiver. Upalabdhi avasa phalavasana. What happens is the Atma automatically gets reflected in that thought and therefore phalavasana. That phala is reflection. We have the vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. So part thought actually removes the ignorance of the part, vritti vyapti, and the consciousness is reflected in the part thought. It's called phalam. Phalam also means reflection. So phala has two meanings. Phala means the result also, and phala means reflection also. In case of Atma, phala means reflection. The Atma in fact brings about the reflection of itself, consciousness in that part thought, and in that sense only Atma is called perceiver because it gets reflected in the part thought. And therefore upalabdhi shabdena upachariyate. Atma is called perception also. The real perception is the part thought. Real perceiver is the I thought. Atma is called perception because it gets reflected in the thought which is perception. Atma is called perceiver because it gets reflected in the perceiver, that's the ahankara. Therefore perception and perceiver, both these words in case of Atma are only in a secondary sense. But why do you use those words? Because without that the perception cannot take place. Without that the perceiver cannot be. Therefore, we call him perceiver or perception. Brahman is called Jagat Karanam in a secondary sense. But why do you in a secondary sense call Brahma as Jagat cause of creation? Because without Brahman, creation cannot take place. Brahman is not creator, but you need presence of Brahman for creation to take place. So Maya Adhyakshana Prakriti Suyate, the Prakriti can bring about the creation only when it enjoys the presence or reflection of consciousness. So therefore, Paramatma is called Karta, creator. Here also Atma is called perceiver in that sense. Yatha chidikriya dvairi bhava phalavasana iti dhatvarthan upachariyate. This is something peculiar, This example is given. So there is a root called chid. Dvaidhi karane. Chid means to split into two. Chid means to cut actually. Chid means to cut. But the meaning is dvaidhi karanam, to split. Split means make two, reduce, convert one into two parts. So actually the action is cutting. What does it do? As a result of cutting, that piece of wood is split into two. So therefore, that cutting action results into splitting. Therefore, in a secondary sense, chid is called dvaidhikaram, to split. Chid means to cut. but also mean to split. Because splitting is the result of the act of cutting. Similarly, perception is the result of this Atma shining. And therefore, is called perceiver. Or Atma is called perception, because it results into act of perception in the buddhi. So, chid means not splitting. Chid means to cut. But why do you call it split? Because cutting results into splitting. So sometimes the thing is denoted by what the result is. So Atma is called perceiver or perception because the result of perception takes place in the buddhi. Now when this is said, then iti ukta shishya, then again he has some other problem. Nanu Bhagavan, mam kutasthatva pratipadana samartho. Now I understand that I am kutastha. Inasmuch as that it is because of my presence that the perception takes place. But the example that you gave of chidik kriya, because to cut is a real kriya. The thing is, perception is not a real kriya. But then we don't have any. Therefore, the example, teacher gave the example of one part as to how chid is called dvaidikaranam, split, because of the result. But this fellow takes that chid itself. Now, the result is all that. But chid itself is an action. Cut is an action. And the result comes because the result is now what is splitting also is a change, is a vikriya. The word is split into two. Splitting is a vikriya or change. And change can take place only when it originates into the action. So chid is the action. And then one who is the locus of chid, also the chitta, also becomes a changing entity. So if I take this example literally, then I come to chid means chitta, who is a splitter. And he is a changing entity. So Upalabdha becomes a changing entity by this rule, Understand that he is understood as basic arguments are all right. But he is splitting hair by taking a word. But then we have to know this because the words are used. And we have to understand why the words are used. They are used in secondary sense. Why they are used in secondary sense, to explain that the discussion is. So it is a kriyapada, all right. Chid also is a kriyapada, meaning denote and a word that denotes action, that brings about splitting, which also is a change. And so, action, the chid, cut also is changing entity. And the result also is changing. So if the result is changing, then that which brings about change also must be changing. The act of cutting. So if the perception is a changing thing, because as the objects change, the perception changes, then Atma that we call the Upalabdha also must be changing, because that's the source of that change. Who is the splitting is a change. What's the source of that change? The act of splitting. Who does that? The chitta, the splitter. So splitter, I'm just using the word splitter, or the woodcutter, the cutter. But we use a splitter here. By the act of splitting, bring about the change called splitting of the wood. So similarly, perception is a changing entity. So result is changing. And therefore that which is the source of that change is Atma. So that also must be changing. Just as in case of splitting, the split is a change that is brought about by the act of splitting, which is carried out by the one who splits. Similarly, here perception is changing. It is brought about by the act of perception. And Atma is the locus of the like, therefore that establishes Atma also must be changing. So I understand Atma is changing, but this example that you gave, sir, that does not seem to convey that. Asamartho drishtanta, that the drishtanta is not quite fit or apt to explain the changelessness of Atma. Katham, why do you say that? Chidihi chidya vikriyavasana upacharyate yatha dhatvarthena. Just as the root chid means to cut, is however called splitting on account of the final outcome which is splitting. Therefore, based on the final outcome, the root chid also is called to split. And therefore, the Chetta, cutter is also called splitter. Tasa Upalabdhi Shabdopacharitopi. Whistling Avaja, I think the volume is about Mutushan. तथा उपलब्धि शब्दोपचरितोपि धात्वर्थः बहुधा प्रत्यय. I understand that real upalabdhi or perception is nothing but a thought, which is बहुधा pratyaya, the modification of mind. Atmana upalabdhi vikriya avasanasched. If that results into perception, which is a vikriya, perception is a phenomenon which changes as the object of perception changes. If that phenomenon of perception is brought about by the act of perception, and that act of perception is a sloka in Atma, who is perceiver, na Atmana kutastatam pratipadayitum samartha, then this Dristant cannot establish the changelessness of Atma. Because when you take a Kriyapada, always involves a change, and therefore the locus of that Kriya or action also is changing. So I understand how Atma is changeless, consciousness, illuminator. But this example that you gave seems to make me feel that if I apply the example in primary sense, then it results into my conclusion that Atma is changing. Like the Chetta. The cutter is changing, so Atma, who is the locus of the act of perception, is a perceiver, also must be changing. Because every locus of action must change. Because it brings about a change. Every act brings about a change as a result. Every action brings about a change, like action of split, cutting. And that is brought about by the act of cutting. And that act rests into the cutter. The cutter also changes. Similarly, perception is the final outcome. That act because of the perception. And perception is because of the act of perceiving. Vijaya is locus in the perceiver, that is Atma. So therefore, if Atma is the locus of the act of perceiving, then it must be changing. So, I will maybe continue tomorrow. Oh, let us take the next paragraph here. Then Guru was Satyam evam syat. What you say would be true. If Upalabdhi means perception was real and act, then definitely Atma or the locus of that act of perception would be changing. Yadi Upalabdhi upalabdroho vishesha. So now we have to distinguish the Drishtanta, which aspect of Drishtanta applies and which does not apply, we have to say. The disciple wants to apply all the aspects of Drishtanta or illustration to this illustrated, and that's what the problem is. So teacher has to clarify which part of illustration is applicable. In case of the act of splitting or cutting, and the one that performs the act, the cutter, they are two different entities. Cutter is one entity which performs the act of cutting, which results into the splitting. So that rule applies. If that was the nature of the verb called perception, upalabdhi, then you would be right that upalabdha also would be changing because of the act of upalabdhi. यदि उपलब्धि उपलब्धोः विशेषः भेदः, if the perceiver and perceiving, if they were different, perceiving and perceiver, if they are different, then what you say would be right, because then perceiving is an action, perceiver is the locus of action, and locus of action changes as the action changes. Nitya upalabdhi matra eva upalabdha. But here when we call Atma upalabdha or perceiver, nitya upalabdha. He is eternal perceiver. Or consciousness called perception is eternal perception. So consciousness is through designations. It is called perception also and called perceiver also. Because here the perception and perceiver are not different. In case of any other action like splitting, the splitting action is different and splitter is different. Here the consciousness is perception also as well as perceiver also. Perception is upalabdhi, perceiver upalabdha. If as in the case of the act of cutting, if the cutter and cutting are different, if similarly the perceiver and perceiver are different, then what you say would have been right. Nitya upalabdhi matra ve upalabdha. So to reveal the nature of Atma, all the discussion is. That Atma is perceiver, all right, but what kind of perceiver? The eternal perceiver. Nitya upalabdha. The moment you apply the adjective nitya, nitya means changeless. Then upalabdha means perceiver. So perceiver implies, so perceiver has two aspects in there. One is the locus of perception, other is the act of perception. Act of perception is changing. Now when you say nitya upalabdha, eternal perceiver, means the perception act cannot be there. So only nityatvam is there. So nitya upalabdha is eternal perceiver. Meaning that perceiving cannot bring about, is not a change, because it can't be nitya. Upalabdhi matra. So some people say that upalabdha is different, upalabdhi is different. It says no, upalabdhi matra. Some say the relationships of bheda, etc., different and non-different, stuff like that. All these kind of pakshas, the upalabdhi and upalabdha are absolutely one. There is consciousness, is upalabdhi as well as upalabdha. So Tarkika Samayeva, Anya upalabdhi, Anya upalabdhava. The Nayayika says that the perceiver is different, and the perceiving is different, the karta is different, the kriya is different. We say no, the karta and kriya in this case are one only. In the case of upalabdhi, therefore, is nitya upalabdha, is eternal perceiver. The moment you apply the adjective eternal, the changing aspect of perceiver is gone. Only changing aspect perceiver remains. That is consciousness. Nandu upalabdhi phalavasano dhatvartha kathamiti. Then why do you say that Atma is dhatu artha? You call Atma a perceiver, which is the meaning of the dhatu perceive. Why do you call him perceiver? So, kinna shrutam tvaya Ushno upalabdhi avasa phalavasana iti uktam. We call Atma the perceiver only because the presence of Atma brings about the reflection in the thought, and therefore perception takes place. In that sense we said Atma is perceiver and not that is perceiver in the prana. Don't you remember we just said that? That upalabdhi phalavasana. That Atma brings about merely reflection in the pratyaya without any action. The thing is that the sun does not need to perform any action to get reflected in water. If it needed to perform an action, then the reflection means that some change takes place there. Similarly, Atma does not need to undergo any change to get reflected in the thoughts. Therefore, upalabdhi abhasa phalavasana iti, that we call Atma a perceiver only because of him the perception takes place. How? Because he gets reflected in thought. That's how thought illumines the object. That's how the perception takes place. In that sense we say Atma is perceiver. If you remember, the expression will upalabdhi abhasa phalavasana. You don't remember that? Kim na shrutam tvaya. That time his mind was in some other thing, and therefore he did not quite catch the meaning of this expression. Dutu Atma vikya utpadanasana iti mayavuk. I didn't say that. Atma is abhasa phalavasana. Atma's role concludes only in reflection. Atma's role does not extend to perception. Atma's role simply extends to reflection in the mind. And that mind then undergoes change for the perception to take place. In case of a cutter, his role is to bring about the act of cutting, that the change, the splitting, and therefore he is also changing. In case of Atma, the role of Atma does not extend to perception. Role of Atma only extends to being reflected. And because of the reflection, perception takes place. In that sense, this Kriyashraya, the locus that Atma is, the act of perception, perceiving, is different from the locus that is woodcutter is of the act of cutting. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.